Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sprint 209 review. This is a normal 2-week sprint ending on April 3rd, and let's get started. I'll start with the overview, Melody on the UI, Adam on providers, Joe on the platform, and I'll wrap up with the API. This sprint was a typical sprint with 78 PRs merged this sprint and 77 PRs still open this sprint. And a lot of enhancements coming in and bugs, but pretty typical. And over to Melody.
Awesome, thanks. So for this sprint, we merged 17 PRs into UI Classic and 2 PRs into UI Services of a varying degrees of UI types, PR types. Next slide, please. So for this PR, the AutoSDE team added a new enhancement to the storage manager to add an option for creating a new physical storage with some enabled capabilities. Here, Dinesh converted the request summary page to React. He also converted the RBAC tag page to React as well. Anu converted the zone summary page to React. The AutoSDE team added name validation to the clone volume name field. They also added logic that would allow the user to attach resources via their storage service, their create storage service page form. The AutoSDE team also added a delete and update buttons and the logic requiring to the host initiator group page. I removed a flash message that was no longer useful for the UI and was causing confusion. David added native console support to the service UI. David also changed the legend on the search bar in the navigation menu to only display when the menu is expanded. I introduced logic that would sort the timeline data by date to avoid back and forths within the timeline chart. Here, some chargeback save record calls were not defined, and this PR fixed that. Adam fixed a bug that would retire a VM with the same ID as the service you tried to retire. So that's been fixed. Jeffrey fixed a bug related to the primary navigation menu. The AutoSDE team added name validation to the provider and host initiator group forms. The AutoSDE team also added validation for the WWPM and IQN addresses to block users from submitting an address that's already in use. They also fixed an issue with the multi-select components CSS. And additionally, Joe removed empty, duplicated, or incorrectly split up files, and I locked the nth check package to a higher version to solve some CVEs. And that's all for the UI. On to Adam.
Thanks, Melody. So this sprint, the bot updated the AWS instance types again. AutoSDE team added the ability to store physical storage capabilities, which are used when they go to then create cloud volumes on the physical storage. It helps the UI determine which features are available. They also added support for updating storage services. So they added the core update methods as well as supports features, and then in their provider updated the added the raw method to actually implement the update. They also did some work to collect cloud volume snapshots, but I think more importantly, they also went through and made the core and API supports features and API endpoints more consistent with typical CRUD for cloud volume snapshots so that we can move over to using the API in the future for those. And they also improved the IQN WWPN array separator when they have to send a list of IQNs to AutoSDE. They send it as a string, and they were using, I forget what they were using before, semicolon or something. It didn't make a lot of sense to separate multiple values, so they switched it over to just simple comma. Commas aren't a valid character in IQNs anyway, and so this just made a lot more sense. For Foreman, we fixed a bug where the EMS ID for the worker, specifically the refresh worker was coming back as an array. This was something that we did previously to be able to allow one worker to refresh multiple manager types. So for example, a cloud manager and a network manager would both be refreshed by the same worker. That caused other issues, and we've since moved away from that, but Foreman was skipped because rather than the parent-child pattern that's typical, they are both equal level managers that belong to a provider. And so this is causing issues when we went to create container deployments and also starting workers on system D to find the EMS by the ID. So we just fixed that up in the same way that we did all the others previously. Next slide. For Power VC, they fixed an issue with catalog provisioning where Power VC templates weren't being listed. This is because they weren't subclassing the provision class, and so it was looking for OpenStack type templates because that's what the provision class was defined in, was in OpenStack. And so basically we went to do a catalog provision and didn't see any possible templates to select. So they fixed that. Jay fixed that up this sprint. For OpenShift, I fixed an issue where verified credentials didn't fail on V3, even though it was supposed to, because we no longer support it. The issue was that V3 actually had the API group that we were checking to make sure that it was V4, which is weird. I'm not sure when they added that because it wasn't originally there, but some versions of OpenShift 3 had that now. So we're checking a different API group that we use as part of the refresh, and so it should be able to fail on V3. So V3.11 was the last supported version of OpenShift by Red Hat, and we are no longer supporting that, as they have also removed support for it. For Overt, we fixed a bug where VM reconfiguration failed due to powered off VMs on Overt and Rev not having a host assigned, and so the host ID for the VM was blank. We were trying to get the list of possible LANs from the host that the VM was on, and so that was blowing up. Fix for this is we bump it up and we get the list of all available LANs from the cluster if the VM is not on a single host. And we also fixed a bug with the protocol not being present in the payload response for the native console API. So this allowed the service UI to more consistently treat the payloads for all the different types of consoles. And next slide, and I think that's it for providers. Over to Joe.
Okay, for ManageIQ platform enhancements, Jeffrey and Adam added some workflow features, including some models, tables, and the RBAC product features. Next, Jason added some logging of the groups and external authentication, which is useful for diagnosing failed logins. I improved some of the Postgres failover logging to provide better context around the current configuration and any actions that are occurring both before and during failover. Brandon added a script to enable cleanup of the factory-built VMs. Next, for maintainability, Keenan made 2 changes to Appliance Console, one to support Ruby 3.0 and test, and another to update Highline to 2.1.0. Jason switched the Appliance Console to use GitHub Actions. Next, for Appliance Build, Brandon removed some unused file share logic and deprecated auth config. For data migrations, Adam removed some Foreman provisioning settings and Rev event network event catcher workers that may still exist in a database. And finally, I removed some missed deletions in the Hyper-V removal, both in Smart State and GEMS pending. Next slide. For platform bugs, Adam fixed the tool collect current logs, which was also including archives when it should only collect the current logs, so that it's much faster and much smaller zip files now. Brandon made the nightly build purger more memory efficient. In the RPM build, Adam added a home directory for the ManageIQ user that was used by some Ansible playbooks and was required. Following up on this change, Brandon fixed an RPM bug where the pre-install script could fail if the home directory already exists, such as on an upgrade. I fixed an issue where the pod deployment name could end with a trailing hyphen, which is invalid. And Brandon fixed an issue where the build machine could run out of memory when running simultaneous builds, so he dropped the memory back to 4 gig. And finally, Igor fixed a codified issue finding the rake file by ensuring we changed to the application root directory before trying to migrate on startup. On to Jason for the API.
Okay. On the API, Adam added the workflows and workflow instances controllers. This goes to the work that he's doing for the new workflows that we POC'd last sprint review. And we'll be continuing to do a lot more enhancements in the workflows area in the coming sprints. And that's it for our presentation today. The next sprint review, sprint 210, will be on April 19th at the usual place and time. And as always, I'd like to thank everyone in the community, thank all our presenters today. We've been getting lots of comments and discussions in the public, and please keep it up. We love seeing it. Thanks, everyone.